Welcome back to Tactics Talk with Guido. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Today, on this episode, we have Captain Obvious in his T37 American Tier 6 light tank. He's in a 510 battle on Muravanka and has spawned down in the south. He sent me this replay looking for help with scouting. Says he's been doing the on-track for the XM551. He says he's okay with passive scouting, but so-so in light tanks, especially when it comes to active scouting. I had a decent game on a 37, but I know I can do better. I'm still getting used to the different LT gameplay at high tiers. Well, this is more mid-tiers, but he's moving on up, getting better as he goes. Let's talk about a couple things right away here, Captain Obvious, about scouts. Down at the bottom, you can see that you're carrying 12 HE. Go ahead and get rid of those. I would carry 0, but if you really just have to have a couple HE, a couple would be plenty, maybe 2. Take those extra 10, give yourself some gold, the APCR, and then up your AP right there. As for the rest of the setup, that's all fine. You've got a couple large kits, a large fire extinguisher, which I agree with, and you're running with binocs and a camo net. So you've got more of a passive setup. This is my favorite setup. It's probably not the most popular setup because running vents and optics would give you probably a better active scout, which can still swing into the passive mode if you want to. I just like getting into the bushes and letting those binocs really start to cook for the passive scouting. Realize there's not a lot of maps where you can take advantage of that. This is kind of one of those maps where you can take advantage of it. So let's get into this particular map and the way you're running your T37 on it. You spawn down in the south and you have an option to go 3 ways. It's a pretty wide open map. You can go over to the west side where the heavies typically brawl. You can go over to the east side where you're going to find most of the lights and mediums and the occasional heavy, or you can try to troll around the middle. I recommend not going to the middle, not this early in the game with this many guns still in it. There's quite a bit of cover there, but there are easy ways to get shot from many different flanks. We'll get started. That's not what you choose. You choose to go over to the west side. Now, I'll talk about this initial positioning in just a moment after we see how you get up here. You're well ahead of your tanks, getting forward, doing that scouting thing, looking for some lights. Cresting right up over the top here. So now let's talk about this positioning and a little bit about the large picture on scouts. Scouts are facilitators of damage, whether it's their own damage or the rest of the team doing the damage. You only have one artillery in this game. So as far as getting spots way out in front where your team can't fire, it's of limited value right now until your team actually gets positioned. There is value in finding out which way the enemy is going. Those are 2 things to think about. You have chosen to go over to where the heavies are going to typically brawl. There is little problem with them getting lights over here on this side, because unless they are way back, and when I say they I mean TDs, unless they're way back in these bushes, but the fight typically is right in this area and doesn't really require a scout to see much of anything. You do have a utility in being very mobile and being able to poke up and over and get in, say, in this little center area, but you're also very prone to being overextended in that area if they have some kind of hard push with their heavies. I do like taking my scouts often over to where the heavy brawl is going to be or where the big brawl is going to be, but what I really like to do with my scouts is take it initially to the critical terrain where I can be the most effective. And for me on this map, it's over on the other side. On Muravanka, it used to be called the Magic Forest. Now it's the Semi-Enchanted Forest because there's some hills and pretty easy to see things. But if you get your scout down here and start lighting these ridges, you're going to have these guys able to take some more shots. They may put scouts up on the ridges. You can come down low here to protect yourself, but you're fast enough you might even be able to tuck up under this ridge really early. The point being that I consider this the critical terrain to be won first on this map. It doesn't necessarily ensure victory because on this map you've got to win this pretty quickly and then make a decision, either come back or push to their cap. Usually it's come back or come across and clean up whatever is over here. That does not mean this side needs to be ignored, but the point is that side can be handled by whatever heavies and things go that way. Taking a scout over there is of limited value. Now if you decide to do that, which we have obviously done, what you really got to be careful about is popping up over and completely exposing yourself on ridges like this. We're going to watch the gameplay go as I'm discussing this, but you are going to present a pretty good target on multiple occasions, and I'm extremely surprised you didn't get waxed early in this game. And it has a lot to do with the enemy team just being very passive. To some extent, that's something you're going to do with a scout, is take a look and say, all right, they're being passive, I can kind of be a little more aggressive, and that's all well and good. That little move right there into that bush, you're not really in that bush. You're protected from the right side, but that left side, if anyone had come around that corner, they were going to immediately see you. And I'll tell you what, I have no idea how this T37 didn't see you right there. There we go. So now we're spotted. And you can see that you've got an M6, some TDs, and a T3045, and you get spotted and you just back up. And look at this, you are completely exposed to anyone who pops up over here, maybe some guys down in here. Guys over here, if their team had got into the force and were along this ridge at all, those are shots, those are places that I'm looking for people to get lit. If I push into this force and I'm up around this area right here, I'm just looking for somebody to get highlighted on this ridge. And unbelievably, you actually take 0 hits right there, but that was extremely dangerous. A scout's strength is not backing up. If you really wanted to get out of there because you were spotted, I'd have dove off the edge of that cliff right there and just sped around this way, put some buildings in between me and anybody else instead of just simply backing up. Good news is that you got away with it. There's an M4. To be honest, I don't know how he saw you, how he did not see you. All right, that's an interesting thing right there that just happened, and sometimes I do that as well. Go back to, you are there to facilitate or do damage. There was no way you were going to pin that guy. All that served to do was let him know you're there. In addition to that, in the facilitation of damage regime, if you'd have just sat there for a moment with him lit, somebody else probably would have shot at him and hit him. And then he wouldn't have known that you were there. You shot him, he gets hit, and now he's probably going to go try to hide. I'm pretty sure someone nails him here in a moment. Yep, there you go. So he's backing up. Maybe just sit there for a moment and light him. All right, so now we're in the heavy brawling area, and unfortunately, your team is almost completely all behind you. They are all hiding behind buildings and ridges, and you're the forward guy. So you're trying to facilitate some damage right here. Coming up here. Bounce off a turret. That's a place where you'd wish you probably had some gold, because that turret's pretty tough as compared to your gun. Now we're going to spend a lot of time messing around with this T37 right here, who's really kind of out of the game, and quite frankly, he's out of the game a lot like you are. You're both just sort of hanging out behind something, more or less at the front lines, but not facilitating or doing any damage. Take a look over on the east. You've got a lot of mediums and things over there. They're pushing through. You had some really good backup. Had you been there spotting all those tanks that are hanging out there, that push on the east side would have gone a lot better. So we're just going to kind of hang out here waiting for this dude. It's a good move getting out of his shot. And just consider the amount of time that you're sort of just sitting here messing around with one scout who's really not in the game. Neither one of you is doing a whole bunch of anything where you are. He's trapped. He can't get away. I would have moved forward and start looking for other angles, other shots, other ways to get damage in. I will give you one thing. You did a nice job of kind of not letting him get shots on you. There goes him. You were still spotted from the 37 when you came up. That's why you didn't see another 6 cents go off. At least I believe that's what happened there. There's a couple times where you don't get lit and I can't quite figure out whether somebody else is spotting you the whole time or they're just that bad on the vision. You can see that your push over on the east side is starting to run into some resistance. Now we're hanging out in a bush. And look at your team right there. Very few of them have a shot on that 34 or 85, and it's all well and good you've got them lit, but sitting in this bush, it's just not really being proactive. And it's a fine line with a scout, being proactive and being stupid, getting too far forward and getting killed. So an interesting thing about scouts and playing them aggressively up front is often when the scout gets a little bit more forward and starts lighting guys up, sometimes you can drag that reluctant team with you forward a little bit as they now see the targets and they're not afraid or as afraid of getting waxed by invisible tanks because you're lighting them. Oftentimes you getting forward, provided you don't get waxed or overextended, you can sometimes drag the team forward with you, and that's a lot of what you're trying to do here. Just some gunnery issues. You miss another shot and you're just messing around with this 37 again. He ends up getting another shot on you. You can see that 30-45, he's going to come up there and try to get this 37. You've got him lit. He knows where he is. There you go. And that's an example of what I'm talking about right there. KV2 you've got to watch for because he can end your day quickly if he hits you. There you go. You got a light. You got a light on the 34-85M, which is good. Now your team has one over on the east, and this is where the east side really can use scouts because they've beat the guys that were down in the flat down here, but typically there's a bunch of TDs or campers hiding in these bushes, and it's very difficult to push up and over and through this area here when there's a bunch of guys camping and potentially guys sitting on the backside of this ridge as well. This is very dangerous, and watch how that develops because your team's going to get kind of wrecked moving forward. It looks like a pretty easy win. You're well ahead in guns, and there should be no reason why you guys don't wrap this up quickly. There goes one of you. There goes another of you. So they're just defending. There goes that guy. You got the KV2. That's good. Your team is still pushing over in the east, but they just don't have any eyes. And this is where you come in. And unfortunately, I have no idea how this happened, but all of these guys completely melted. Actually, I do have a good idea of how it happened. All the hiding out TD, well, there's only one TD and he's over here, but all the tanks hiding out up here, and that scout was spotting him, have wrecked all your dudes who pushed through right here. So now all your team is over on the east side, and what they need from you is eyes on. You've got to go light, guys, because they're hanging out here in the flats and they're getting their arses kicked. So you need to come around this corner or up over the top here and start lighting some of these guys who are obviously down in here shooting them so that they have shots back. That's just unlucky. Right into the ground. There you go. Now, I don't quite understand that because you take that shot, you didn't get lit, and you back up and you just keep on backing up and you've still got a guy you can shoot there. So you gave away at least one shot, maybe two. That is the dude that's got to go down. That ELC is going to cause you nothing but grief. Especially because he's spotting for a bunch of guys hiding in bushes back here. There we go. Fortunately, the 34-85M is foolish and he goes out into the open. There's a KV1 down there. No, shoot the 80. There you go. Nice idea. I think you were going to shoot him as a dark tank, and that's what you should have done. And now you've got to get down there and give these guys some lights. And once again, just at the moment when I thought you were going to get forward and start doing that scout thing, you're backing up. I appreciate the carefulness with which you're driving the tank. And this goes back to one of the biggest problems people have with driving scouts is they feel like they can't really do much. Like, I'm not a very effective combat tank, so I need to be very careful and withhold my hit points and husband them. And while it's true that you want to avoid taking hits, it's very untrue that you want to do it by constantly hanging back and not doing anything. I mean, it's definitely a case where your team is screaming like, we need some help here, brother. You've got to light these guys up. Don't die. We need you as a scout, but you have got to get in there and get some lights. There you go. Yeah, you're just going to have a hard time pinning that dude. And that's where I talked about having gold with you. If you'd have had 8-10 gold rounds, you could have then taken some chunks off of that KV1. And he'd be pretty close to dead right now. And this is yet another example of now you're backing off, and I can't really understand why, because that's the guy you need to get down. These dudes are tearing him up, but they may lose lights on him. And also, because you're maneuverable and you're able to get into position, you had him fighting multiple directions. Now that you've disappeared, he can square up against the two guys that are shooting him. Instead of 3 directions, it's 2 directions. If he turns his turret, tries to shoot the 67 or the M4, because of your speed, you could actually pull out, track him, maybe even get a pin into the side of him if he gives you enough flat angle on the side of his tank. The point being that right now you need to be worrying to death that KV-1 like a little bulldog hanging out there. You actually are a little bulldog, aren't you? That tank will grow up to be one. But anyway, get in there. You're biting his ankles, keeping him positioned, keeping him busy so that your team can take him out. By backing up, you're just letting him off the hook. You had him. Now the ELC is an issue, and I liked what you were doing going around there, but if you're going to back up, go do something. Maybe try to go find that ELC. He's got to be somewhere around there. All right, there's the stir. There we go. Now let's get in there. I'm sorry, I got my view, not yours. And just another example of what I'm talking about. Now that dude's coming out there. You got to hold down position here. You can pen a stir. Get down a little bit lower here and duel this guy. Take him down. There we go. M4 got him. Very good. And so, in that situation, people watching may say, well, Guido, he spotted him and backed up and they already got him, so all's good. That's what you're supposed to do as a scout. Well, I agree with that in principle, but he could also be a little bit further forward taking shots at this guy too, adding more damage to the mix. That was a pretty far shot by the M4 who nuked him. I think he's running the dirt back there. So good on the M4 for hitting him, but Captain Obvious could definitely have been in there taking a few more shots and worrying to death that stir. And now we're down to a 3v3. And I'm going to tell you, it's largely because of your a little too careful gameplay. You're getting the job done, but you're losing tanks by not being out there in the front. There you go, the KV-1. Track him. Go for that back wheel or the front drive wheel. Whatever that back sprocket's called, the return, whatever it is. There you go, right in the old turret, because the KV-1 turret is actually pretty weak. Nicely done. Another case where some gold would have made you probably feel a little bit better about shooting him, but you got her done with the weak spot. And I like that you're hiding. Take a look down at the mini-map. Now you know where that ELC is. So make a decision. Either go after their artillery or cruise over there and try to take down that ELC. We're going to head over here. Alright, this is another thing about scouts that you've got to learn, and it's also about the rest of the game and the tanks. You've got to understand the spots where people will be, where they possibly can be, and where you think they might be. You actually pass up one of the most likely spots for artillery is down behind this hill right here. Alright? You know where the ELC is. You're fast enough, you could have swept up this ridge and taken a look and then headed over to the corner. You go by here. Another thing to remember with scouts is Sixth Sense is a de facto spotting mechanism. Even if you don't see them, if you get lit up, you have a pretty good idea of where they are, depending on your knowledge of the map. We're going to move up here to this tree. Now that's a downed tree. You got to be careful with those. I can't remember, but the camo on a downed tree is actually centered around somewhere near the bottom of the trunk, I believe. So it's a little bit weird. Sometimes you're not in a tree, even if you're looking at it like this. Sometimes you're not really in a downed tree as far as cover goes. Look it up. That's not something I'm completely on top of. Because I don't typically try to use trees as cover, down trees. I may add that to cover around me and other bushes, but I don't rely on down trees for cover. When you pulled into that spot, though, one thing you probably wanted to do was, when I get into a spot where I think I'm going to do some spotting with a scout, I zoom in so that I see my turret view, so I have a general idea of what things I am spotting. I can sit here at that view like you had and assume that if someone's here, I might see him. But if I zoom in, I might go, ooh, if he is there and he's small, I actually might not see that guy. It just gives me a good idea of what my turret can see. Look how much you can't see over in those buildings right there. So somebody could actually approach pretty close to you in here, and because of that rise right here in front of you, you wouldn't actually see them. Good news is he gets lit, so you were looking at that spot, but you didn't really know that without zooming in and going, yeah, I'm going to catch anyone coming down through there, because I can definitely see that spot right there. Yeah, that's a bummer, little gunnery issue right there. This is a catch-22. Do I stop and look for good shots on this guy and risk the arty hitting me, or do I circle him like I'm doing here? Get your auto aim going there. There's that artillery. Guess what? He was exactly where I said he was going to be, or exactly where I said you missed looking. And down he goes. So we get there, right? 709 damage, 1,285 spotting, 2 kills, still alive, and a critical reason of why you won. So nice job, man, overall. But just take all that stuff I talked about and work on all that, because what I'm going to end with saying is a lot of the reason it came down to such a close game is because you're very timid scout play. After I've said this, and if you try to be more aggressive, you're going to find on occasion you're going to get crushed. But those are going to be learning experiences. So as long as you try to look at those and go, all right, what did I do wrong there? How was I a little too over-aggressive? As opposed to say, well, that doesn't work. Let's go back to being very passive and kind of sitting back. Eventually, your skill will increase on the scout side. All right, man, like I said, good job. Lots of good things to take in there, especially the fact that you're still alive and were an important part of winning the game. Don't let me take anything away from any of that kind of thing. I like this little tank. Pretty cool little tank. All right, guys, that's all I got. As always, we will see you.